Guys, welcome to my channel. Today's scary story is called The Lantern That Floated on Its Own. There was once a poor village nestled at the bottom of a valley. It was a sweet village with kind people, but they were dirt poor. One evening, while the villagers were sitting in their homes eating dinner, they heard chains dragging metal moans. At first, they thought it was just the wind. But then they heard a voice that seemed to be calling out for help. It sounded like an old woman moaning, "Oh, please help me." The villagers grabbed weapons and went outside to investigate. They found a large black cauldron over a fire. And inside the cauldron, they saw something that made their blood run cold. There was a humanoid shape floating in the cauldron, and it had a lantern on its head. And every time the shape moved, the lantern would float up and down with it. The villagers decided to leave the creature alone. Maybe it was a demon or some otherworldly being. Who were they to disturb whatever it was? So they all went back home and locked their doors. But the next morning, they heard chains dragging again, and the old woman's voice called out, "Oh, please help me." And when the villagers looked out their windows, they saw that the cauldron was gone. But what made them gasp in horror was that the lantern from the creature was floating down the road by itself. The lantern seemed to be beckoning for the villagers to follow it, and so they did. The bravest of the bunch carried weapons in case the creature from the previous night was following the lantern. As they followed the lantern, it led them deeper and deeper into the forest. And after about an hour, they couldn't see the sun or the moon through the thick canopy of branches. Then suddenly, the lantern stopped in a clearing and hovered above a deep hole, too. The hole seemed to go on forever. And when the villagers leaned over it, they could feel a cold wind coming from it. They looked back at each other, unsure of what to do. Someone threw a rock into the hole, but it didn't make a sound when it hit the bottom. And after a few moments, one of the villagers took a step forward. He reached out his hand toward the lantern and whispered, "Thank you." And before anyone could stop him, he jumped into the hole. For a moment, there was silence, then screams. The villagers screamed and ran away. For weeks after that, the villagers heard chains dragging and the old woman's voice calling out for help. But now they also heard a new sound, the sound of someone screaming in agony. Score. One day, a young girl who lived at the edge of the village looked out her window and saw the lantern from the story floating down the road. She knew she should run and hide, but she couldn't help but feel a sense of curiosity. As she watched, the lantern floated past her house and into the forest. She hesitated for a moment, then ran after it. She had to find out where it was going. She followed the lantern for hours, and when it finally stopped, she found the same clearing and the deep hole from the story. She could hear chains dragging and the old woman's voice calling out for help. But she also heard a new sound, a voice that sounded exactly like her grandmother's. Her grandmother had passed away years ago, and she missed her dearly. So, when she heard her voice, she couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. Maybe this was her grandmother's spirit, come to take her away from this world and bring her to a better one. With that thought in mind, she jumped into the hole. Many years later, a traveler came across the village. He was a storyteller who had heard many scary stories, but none of them scared him. He walked into town and asked the locals if they knew any good stories. The villagers looked at each other nervously. Finally, one of them spoke up. "We have a story, but it's not a good one. Are you sure you want to hear it?" The storyteller nodded. And so the villagers told him the story of the lantern that floated on its own.